So today I'm reflecting my experience with the storytelling of the story named Down to the Kitchen, where I utilizes the Aboriginal voice of Dabri, meaning inner deep listening with concentration. Here, my aim is not to retell the story, but to share my experience of exploring how I listened to the story and how my understanding of listening modified my inclusive practice. Before starting the video, I prepared myself to listen with a focus, assuming things on my own, as it was a challenge for me because I'm a person with a lot of inner chattering at the same time. This was achieved by practicing the daburi that reflects on my focus, presence, and patience. According to the Rinaldi 2011, listening is an ethical process that emphasizes deep listening that comes with welcoming the complexity rather than reaching closure with one's own assumptions, which helps to return and turn pedagogy of listening. By adapting a few of these strategies, I start focusing on the tone, pauses, and start listening and analyzing the concept from their lenses. Thus, my listening confronts the aspect of historical and ongoing impacts of colonization in Australia, which includes the reality of the stolen generation, that is, how Aboriginal children were separated from their families for decades and under the guise of the government policies. Sorry. And it affects are still ongoing. Listening with Dabri strengthens the power of the story and helps to shape my understanding in relation to historical injustice. Here I realize the importance of acknowledging the history of Australia honestly and role of inclusive practice. Before that, I used to think that inclusion is basically fairness, but now after listening carefully and working on my listening strategies, it reshaped my understanding on inclusion, which involves justice and recognition of the special rights, which requires active respect, truth-telling, and acknowledging that. As the story was emotionally heavier, those emotions were passed through generations. The grandma in the video is describing the harsh reality of the colonization. Thus, after listening to the Down to the Kitchen, I understand why it is important for the educators to acknowledge the historical trauma before they talk about the belongingness, as without acknowledgement, it's just meaningless. Even according to the Suminson et al. 2018, belonging in early childhood education involves more than just welcoming. It includes strong relationships, identity, and respect. Even according to the EYELF Learning Outcome 1, we need to critically engage with the land to understand it and to connect with it historically. It teaches us the inclusion practice must honor the country and connects to its history, creating an atmosphere where families and the child feel safe to share their background and history. This will also help us as educators to authentically embed the Aboriginal perspective respectfully in the class rather than occasionally engaging with it. Ultimately, these strategies of listening help me to learn that the meaning of the words depend on the concentration we use to understand it. And it is only not a passive process, but it's an act of care, respect, and focus. These storytelling assignments help me to influence my own inclusive practice. For example, if I listen deeply with openness, I can understand these families and the child better, which could help me to build a strong relationship with the families and with the child at the same time. This is even more important to create a good curriculum which invites and respect inclusivity and carries the meaningful voices of every child along with their family. As a child, as a story described in the Down to the Kitchen tells how important is the deep listening because it carries both trauma and real silence in the same context, which can only be listened with openness without considering any assumptions. Thank you.